It all began innocently enough, a dusty old painting of a crying boy that hung in the living room of our new house. We moved into the small town of Ravenswood, where quaint cottages lined the streets, and rumors whispered through the autumn winds. My parents had purchased the old Victorian home at a surprisingly low price, as if the previous owners couldn't wait to rid themselves of the property. The painting, however, was peculiar. The boy's tear-streaked face stared out from the canvas with an eerie realism. His sorrowful eyes seemed to follow you, and the faintest hint of a wicked smile curled at the corners of his lips. It wasn't the kind of art you'd expect in a cozy family home, but my parents dismissed it as a quirky vintage find. As we settled in, the neighbors shared chilling tales about the crying boy paintings. It was a popular series in the 1950s and 60s, believed to bring a curse upon any house that displayed it. Whispers of inexplicable fires and the paintings remaining unscathed in the aftermath filled the town's folklore. Skeptical, my parents laughed off the stories, attributing them to overactive imaginations. Yet, as the nights grew colder and the fireplace flickered in the dimly lit living room, the painting seemed to cast shadows darker than its own frame. I couldn't shake the feeling that those sorrowful eyes harbored secrets, and the haunting rumors nestled in my mind like a restless specter. Determined to unravel the mysteries behind the painting in our new home, I delved into the town's archives. The original Crying Boy paintings were the creation of an enigmatic artist named Bruno Amadio, who went by the pseudonym Giovanni Bragolin. Born in Venice in the early 20th century, Amadio's troubled childhood influenced his haunting depictions of tearful children. His works gained popularity, and prints of the crying boy found their way into countless homes. The legend of the cursed paintings, however, took root in the mid-20th century. Stories of inexplicable house fires, each with a common thread of the crying boy on display, spread quickly. People whispered of the cursed tears that fueled the flames, leaving only the untouched prints behind. Curiosity turned into an obsession as I traced the ownership history of the painting. The first family, the Hendersons, had owned the paintings during the 1960s. Newspaper clippings detailed a devastating fire that claimed their home, but the crying boy print miraculously survived. Similar tales repeated with subsequent owners, the Jenkins, the Martins, and the Parkers, all experiencing unexplained fires that spared the haunting artwork. Each family's story grew more sinister. The Hendersons were plagued by financial ruin. The Jenkins faced a string of tragedies. The Martins succumbed to illness, and the Parkers disappeared without a trace. The common denominator? The crying boy, silently witnessing the torment of its owners. Haunted by the inexplicable patterns, I sought out descendants of the previous owners. The Hendersons' granddaughter, an elderly woman named Alice, spoke in hushed tones about the wailing nightmares that haunted her childhood. She described the constant feeling of being watched, the oppressive weight of sorrow that clung to her family. The Jenkins' son, now an elderly man named Robert, shuddered as he recounted the tragedies that befell his kin. His voice quivered with an unspoken fear as he spoke of a darkness that lingered in their home, growing more malevolent with each passing year. The Martins' great-grandson, a middle-aged man named Thomas, revealed the eerie coincidences that plagued his family's history. Illnesses struck without warning, and the crying boy's silent gaze seemed to mock their misfortunes. The Parkers' niece, a woman named Evelyn, spoke of the abrupt disappearance of her relatives. The house stood empty for years, a silent witness to the unsettling events that unfolded within its walls. Each descendant shared tales of despair and misfortune, a common thread woven by the presence of the crying boy. The curse seemed to transcend time, leaving a trail of broken lives in its wake. Each curse ended with the house burning down except for the Parkers. They just disappeared. Always the crying boy painting was left unscathed. As I pieced together the chilling puzzle, a realization settled over me like a shroud. The curse wasn't confined to the paintings themselves, but rooted in the lives of the families who owned them. The crying boy became an omen, an embodiment of the sorrows that haunted its surroundings. With a heavy heart, I confronted my parents about the cursed history of our home. Skepticism faded from their faces as I presented the evidence, the stories of the Hendersons, Jenkins, Martins, and Parkers. The room felt suffocated by an invisible presence, and the air hung thick with the weight of generations haunted by a malevolent force. We had a priest come over to bless them and cast out the evil from the paintings. That night we gathered the crying boy paintings from our walls, cut them up, put lighter fluid on them, and set them ablaze in the backyard. As the flames consumed the cursed images, a haunting wail echoed through the quiet night, the collective sorrow of generations released into the inferno. The next morning, a sense of calm settled over Ravenswood. The chilling tales of the crying boy paintings faded into the realm of forgotten folklore. Our house, once plagued by an unseen darkness, felt lighter, as if the curse had lifted with the crackling embers of the burnt canvases. But the truth lingered, etched into the scars of history. The cursed paintings were not vessels of supernatural wrath, but mirrors reflecting the tragedies of those who dared to own them. As the town moved forward, the memories of the crying boy faded, leaving only a chilling echo in the recesses of Ravenswood's haunted past. I have always been fascinated by old things, especially those with mysterious pasts. So when I stumbled upon the story of the Dybbuk Box, it instantly piqued my interest. They say it's haunted by a Dybbuk, a restless spirit from Jewish mythology that can possess the living. It all began with an innocent-looking wine cabinet that harbored a malevolent force, a force that had wreaked havoc on those who dared to possess it. The tale of the Dybbuk Box traces back to its origins, to a Jewish family who lived in Eastern Europe during the early 20th century. It was said that the box was crafted by a troubled soul, imbued with his pain and anguish. Legend had it that he sought to contain the spirit of a Dybbuk within its wooden confines, hoping to rid himself of its torment. But instead, he unwittingly unleashed a curse that would plague generations to come. The first owner of the Dybbuk Box was a prosperous merchant, a man of wealth and influence. He acquired the box during his travels through the shtetls of Eastern Europe, drawn to its ornate carvings and intricate design. Little did he know of the darkness that lurked within. Strange occurrences began to unfold soon after the merchant brought the box into his home. Objects would inexplicably move on their own, shadows danced in the corners of his vision, and whispers echoed through the halls at night. At first, he dismissed them as mere tricks of the mind, but as the days passed, the incidents grew more frequent and unsettling. Desperate for answers, the merchant sought the counsel of rabbis and mystics, hoping to rid himself of the curse that had befallen him. But try as they might, none could offer him solace or sanctuary. It seemed that the Dybbuk Box had claimed him as its own, a vessel for its malevolent power. As the years went by, the box passed from owner to owner, each one falling victim to its sinister influence. Some succumbed to madness, while others met untimely ends under mysterious circumstances. But the one thing that remained constant was the suffering that accompanied the box wherever it went. One of the most tragic tales belonged to a young family who stumbled upon the box at a flea market in Prague. Drawn to its mystique, they brought it home, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. Their once happy household soon descended into chaos as the Dybbuk's influence took hold. The children spoke of shadowy figures that lurked in their bedrooms at night, whispering malevolent secrets in their ears. The parents, plagued by nightmares and paranoia, grew increasingly distant, their love soured by suspicion and fear. In the end, they were driven to the brink of madness, their lives torn asunder by forces beyond their comprehension. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the Dybbuk Box was its ability to manipulate those who came into contact with it. It whispered promises of power and wealth, luring unsuspecting souls into its clutches with false promises of salvation. And once it had ensnared them, it reveled in their suffering, feeding off their despair like a parasite. As I delved deeper into the history of the Dybbuk Box, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease creeping over me. It was as if the very air around me was charged with an otherworldly energy, a palpable sense of dread that lingered long after I had closed the book. And yet, despite the warnings and the tales of woe, there was a part of me that was drawn to the box, that yearned to unravel its mysteries and uncover the truth behind its dark power. Perhaps it was curiosity or foolishness that drove me forward. But deep down, I knew that the Dybbuk Box held secrets that were best left undisturbed. As I delved deeper into the stories of the previous owners, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Dybbuk was watching me, a silent evil lingering in the shadows. The nightmares grew more vivid, merging with reality in a twisted dance of torment. One evening, as I sat in my dimly lit living room, the air grew thick with a cruel stillness. The cabinet seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. I felt a presence in the room, an invisible force closing in on me. Panic set in as I struggled to breathe. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness and a cold wind whispered through the air. I could sense the Dybbuk's rage, a vile force that had fed on the suffering of its previous victims. It sought a new vessel, a fresh soul to torment. As the shadows closed in, I realized the chilling truth. The Dybbuk wasn't confined to the cabinet. It had conquered its wooden prison, manifesting in the darkness that surrounded me. The nightmares had been a warning, a prelude to the hatred that now sought to claim me. I fought against the suffocating darkness, scrambling to escape the clutches of the vengeful spirit. But the Dybbuk was relentless, a force that exceeded the boundaries between dreams and reality. As the room echoed with ghostly whispers, I understood the horrifying reality. The Dybbuk Box was not just a cursed artifact, it was a gateway to a realm of eternal torment. In that moment of dread as the malevolent force closed in, I made a desperate gamble. With trembling hands, I sealed the cursed cabinet in layers of protective symbols, desperate to contain the vengeful spirit within its wooden prison once more. The room slowly returned to normal, the cruel and evil whispers lifting. I was left shaken, haunted by the realization that the Dybbuk Box was a vessel of true horror, a conduit for a spirit that transcended the boundaries of folklore. The nightmares ceased, but the scars of that night lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that the Dybbuk, though confined, still watched from the shadows. As I locked the cabinet away, hidden from prying eyes, I couldn't help but wonder, who would be the next unwitting victim of the malevolent spirit that lurked within the depths of the Dybbuk Box? In the end, it was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows, waiting to ensnare the unwary and the foolish. For as long as the Dybbuk Box remained at large, its legacy would endure, a testament to the enduring power of fear and the darkness that dwells within us all. I remember the day I first laid eyes on that doll, tucked away in the corner of the museum. It was a dusty old thing with button eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. The plaque beneath it read, "Annabelle, do not touch." But it wasn't just the warning that sent shivers down my spine. It was the stories surrounding that doll. They said it was possessed, inhabited by the spirit of a young girl named Annabelle. But it wasn't until I started digging into the doll's history that I realized just how chilling those stories were. The doll had once belonged to a young woman named Donna. She and her roommate Angie had found it at a thrift store and thought it would make a charming addition to their apartment. But from the moment the doll entered their lives, strange things started happening. At first, it was just little things, misplaced items, strange noises in the night. But then things took a darker turn. Donna began to have vivid nightmares of the doll attacking her, strangling her in her sleep. And Angie swore she saw the doll move on its own, its tiny hands reaching out to grab her. Terrified, the girls reached out to a medium, who told them that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a young girl who had died tragically in their apartment building. They tried to ignore the warnings, but the doll's presence became increasingly malevolent. One night, Donna's boyfriend Lou came over to stay the night. As they slept, they were awoken by the sound of rustling coming from the living room. When they went to investigate, they found the doll sitting in the corner, its arms outstretched as if waiting for a hug. That was the last straw. Donna and Lou reached out to a pair of paranormal investigators named Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens conducted a seance and determined that the doll was indeed possessed by a malevolent entity. They took the doll with them, but even then the terror didn't end. The Warrens' own museum became a hotbed of paranormal activity, with the Annabelle doll at the center of it all. Visitors reported feeling watched, and some even claimed to have been scratched or pushed by an unseen force. But it wasn't until I stumbled upon an old journal belonging to one of the Warrens' assistants that I learned the full extent of the doll's power. The journal detailed how the doll seemed to feed off fear and negative energy, growing stronger with each passing day. The Warrens tried to contain the doll, locking it away in a glass case and blessing it regularly to keep its power in check. but even they couldn't deny the darkness that emanated from it. As I read through the journal, I couldn't shake the feeling that the doll was watching me, its button eyes boring into my soul. I knew then that I had to get rid of it, to rid the world of its malevolent presence once and for all. But as I made plans to dispose of the doll, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't done with me yet. And as I sit here now, writing this account, I can't help but wonder if I've made a terrible mistake, because somewhere out there the Annabelle doll waits, and it's only a matter of time before it finds its next victim.